Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Tim from Arc Tactical. Today, we're going to sit down with Matt Porter from One IC. That is the one in charge. He has a great training group there with lots of excellent material, and he really is truly making an impact on the industry. He covers things from law enforcement tactics to emotional intelligence, de-escalation, all kinds of stuff, and he has a joy to talk to, and just his gratitude that he pushes out to everybody that got him there is just something to behold. So I really hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you so much for listening. All right, guys, we are here with Matt Porter of One IC, and we're going to go into the full journey of how we got here, and it's a heck of a story. But Matt, just to give you some Cliff Notes versions, is a law enforcement expert. He is a leader. He is an emotional intelligence expert, and just brings a lot to the table when it comes to investing in law enforcement and corrections and the corporate world and everybody. So really excited to have you on, man. Thank you so much for doing this.
I appreciate the opportunity, Tim. It's pretty exciting. It's fun since you've been kind of a mentor and partner with me for a really long time since we were working the road together. And I would see in the jail, this is just kind of a dream come true to see how we've evolved over the last like 15 years or so. It's pretty neat.
It really is, man. And that's kind of why we do it, is building things. And it's not everybody's gig, but I really like it. And I think that people that are into creating and bettering and empowering other people, we kind of flock together. So it's great to see where we've come. So,
Yeah.
and I think we first met really when you were working for your agency. And like you said, you would book people into our jail on a contract basis, and got to know you a little well through that. And you have your favorite people that you run into on the road and all that. And it's really cool to be able to still stay connected. But I wanted to kind of go into that a little bit. How long have you been a law enforcement officer?
So I've been in law enforcement for 17 years, and we'll get into how I got into this in a little bit. It's kind of a funny story, but so been on the job for 17 years, same agency, first agency that gave me a shot, and I've been loyal to them for that opportunity the whole time. And it's been, it's been really quite the adventure. I did not know that law enforcement was going to be my thing. Yeah, and I'm so glad that law enforcement found me, or we found each other, because it's been the work of my life. It's been a dream job, a hard job, but worth every minute.
That's awesome. And for those who aren't aware, you can become a law enforcement officer here in Washington State, and you can lateral to different agencies and kind of see what else is out there. But that's not you. You have legitimately stuck with the girl that brought you to the dance, and you've been incredibly successful there and made a lot of impact, not just at that agency, because that's a given, but just in the region, not to mention the state. And so I really, really applaud you for sticking through what I know are some tough times during the course of a career. But just really cool that loyalty is something that bleeds through you.
Well, I think they really, if I can give some credit to my agency and the leadership there, they were really supportive of me early in my career. I came in with some martial arts experience, and before I was off probation, they're like, "Hey, we need somebody to take over the defensive tactics program," and I was like, "I'll do that." And that was my first experience teaching. And then they said, "Hey, we've got openings on the SWAT team," and the current chief at Linwood. I remember being on a canine track with Chief Langdon, and I had a big smile on my face. I was like, "This is the first time I'm tracking with a dog," which is unbelievable experience. And he's looking at me smiling as we're crawling through the dirt and climbing over fences. And he was on the team at that point. He's like, "Hey, you ever thought about joining SWAT? You might like it." And I was like, "Bro, I didn't even think about I was going to be a cop 2 years ago, much less a SWAT guy." He's like, "Well, you should check it out." And then, man, my agency allowed me to do that. And they've allowed me to really run with anything that I wanted. They rarely said no until I got task saturated, when they wisely said no, which was a hard lesson, but a great lesson for a young cop. And they continue to give me the latitude to develop myself as a person, develop my train company, the latitude to go out and develop the officers in the state. And I have got to give credit to my home agency, and I appreciate the leadership there for giving me that rope. It's just, man, it's been a blessing.
That is so cool. And you touched on something that is really important, not just for law enforcement officers who are trying to make a difference, but entrepreneurs and all that. And that is trying to do all the things at the same time. Uh, totally guilty of it.
Oh yeah.
And it's a hard thing to balance. And what you end up doing is just not doing anything well. You're doing all the things to a lower standard. And sometimes it takes solid leadership to be able to humbly bring that to your attention and scale back. And that can be a hard message to hear, but often, and obviously it's working well for you, but it's something that helps you grow as a person. So that's a great point there.
Yeah, it was awesome. And it's advice that I have as my roles have matured, and I have become a leader myself or taken over leadership roles. And I can see it coming for young officers, and it's a real balance as a leader to meter somebody's enthusiasm, because that's really the dream as a leader is I don't need a stick. I need a leash. Like, I gotta pull the chain a little bit to slow these guys down. Man, that's the dream. And it's just guide them a little bit and let them run. But there are definitely times when the quality of the work is as important as the quantity of the work.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to see when you're deep in the work that's a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. As a hard charger new officer, it's fun building your career. I mean, almost like building a business. You're building the things that you are trying to stack, not just for the resume, but your capabilities and all that.
Correct.
And as a leader, being able to say, no, I really think that you are going to serve yourself a lot better if you focus on these three things and making it the best you possibly can. And when you're tired of that, let's move on to something different and give that project to another person. But big lessons there. I love that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So you mentioned that getting into law enforcement was something that you kind of found each other. I want to hear all about this. I didn't know this story.
Yeah. So, okay. Let's see where to start. I was basically, I lost a bet. That's how I got into law enforcement.
Okay.
I was living on a beach, not on, like I wasn't sleeping on the beach. I was living in Hawaii, spending all my time at the beach. I had the beautiful blonde girlfriend and surfing every day. It was a spectacular. I was working there in sales. So my background is in human psychology. I went to school to be a marriage counselor. I thought, you know what, that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I worked my way through college doing sales, really enjoyed that. I was a mediocre salesman, but I loved working in sales. And took a job for a friend of mine in Hawaii selling housekeeping services. Right. So he had a company that was the housekeeping. He was a subcontractor for a bunch of really nice resorts, and said, "Hey, Matt, you want to come over and work for me and try and grow my business?" I was like, "Yeah, brother. I mean, you're asking me to move to Hawaii. You're going to set me up with a job, place to stay, in a car, and all I have to do is go out and build relationships." He's like, "Yep, that's it." Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm in Hawaii. I'm surfing and hanging out with my beautiful blonde girlfriend, and I'm thinking this is the life. But to tell you the truth, brother, I was missing something. I was missing the Northwest. I grew up in the Northwest. I was missing the some of the culture in the Northwest. I was definitely missing the weather, which sounds weird. But when it's 85 every day and you're used to all four seasons and some extreme with those seasons, you miss that. And I kind of set a deadline. I said, hey, at the end of this year, I'm going to come back to Seattle and I'm going to go to work for a nonprofit. That was my intent. I was going to take my maturity plus my sales experience and my background in psychology, and instead of doing marriage counseling, I was going to go and work nonprofit development.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was the plan. And I was looking at nonprofits to start volunteering with and go to work for one of them. I loved the opportunity to work for my friend Craig and his company. And it was fantastic. But there was a missing piece. It was like a service piece. I didn't want to make money for other people. And I get that his business was creating jobs for folks, and it was important, but I just wanted it to mean a little bit more to me personally and to be a little bit more in service to my community. So
Sure,
anyway,
absolutely. That's something that really
about three
drives a lot of
months. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying that drive for service is something that really does affect a lot of people, and you can make money 1,000 different ways. But that's why one of the reasons why I think the nobility of law enforcement and corrections is so unique. Um, it really satisfies that uh, need to help your community in that service piece.
Well, and hey, full disclosure, bro, that wasn't something that I even thought about or couldn't put the words to until I matured significantly. Right. I
Right.
was that like it just wasn't in my frame of reference. There was a lot of maturing that needed to happen for that drive to emerge. So, about, oh boy, we're talking like 30 days before I'm moving. The beautiful blonde girlfriend is my wife now, and we were like, okay, I think we're going to get married. Let's move back to Seattle. She had already moved back, and I was on the phone with my friend Greg, who was a cop at Linwood, and he had been a cop for almost 10 years at that point. Two of my best friends were cops in the Northwest, and Greg said,
I'm trying to
"Hey,
do
Matt,
the math of who this Greg is.
yeah, uh, we can edit his name out if he doesn't want to say it. It's Greg Jameson."
I love Greg Jameson. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he's
was on
freaking
my
great dude, man. He
one of my
was,
Explorer advisors.
yeah. So when you talk about early mentors, Greg Jameson really mentored me early in my career, and his advice, really his advice to me, my entire life has been spot on. This is just somebody who I have the deepest respect for. And he says to me on a phone call, he goes, Matt, so let me get this straight, because I told him exactly what I just told you. You want to be a do-gooder. You're not interested in making any money. You like doing martial arts. You like driving fast, and you like shooting guns. I was like, yep. He's like, I bet you could be a cop. I was like, I bet you I can't. I hang up with him. I call my now wife Mel, and I said, "Hey, babe, what do you think about me being a cop?" And there's a pause, and she's like, "Go for it." I mean, it's one of the spectacular people in your lives who it's the spouse the dream spouse. You want to do that? Go for it. Like,
It's
quick thought
awesome.
about it, go for it. So I get back to the Northwest. I get a job temporarily working in sales, and I start the process to get hired, which is not an easy process. I started the process in my late 20s. Took me a couple years to find my agency, and they gave me the nod, bro. I never on the radar until Greg said, "I'll bet you would make a good cop."
That is so
And I didn't
cool.
even know I would make a good cop. I was just like, shoot, I'm going to see. Why not? I have nothing to lose. Again, like moving to Hawaii, I've got nothing to lose. We don't have kids yet. We're newly married. Let's see what happens.
Let's do the thing. Yeah, we have a saying in one of the groups I'm involved in. It's just do the thing. If it's crazy, it's probably right.
Could
So
be.
that's really cool. Now, when you were applying, it's a different world than it is now. Probably around the same time that I was on or trying to get hired on, there were spots that were very sparse. Like you couldn't find an agent. You're one of 200 people applying for a law enforcement agency, and these days it's like, come on, let's make it happen, right? Um, how long did it take you to finally get on through that process? Do you think?
It took me almost 2 years,
Wow.
which was a really long time. And part of it was a little bit of a lack of commitment early on for me, and then just finding the right fit with the right agency. I tested reasonably well, but not great. So I wasn't one of these guys who's like, I wanted to be a cop my whole life, and I lived a perfect clean lifestyle my whole life, and I got a criminal justice degree, and I did nothing but all the things that really like the in theory perfect candidate um, had in their background. I was one of these outlier candidates. I did other stuff. You know, went to college, had a sales job, played some sports, not kind of the prototypical candidate that was getting hired, 20 years ago. And
Right.
there were tons of people on those lists. I was told, yep, you made the list. And I would call them back 6 months later and like, sorry, bro, you weren't high enough on the list. Since you were on the list, we retested. And the way it works on that list is I could be number 6. They'll hire 5 and then they'll establish a new list. And the next 5 that have higher scores, if their scores are higher than mine, it's not like I have seniority. They're looking for the best candidate. So
Yeah, that's a wrap.
yeah,
Man,
yeah,
it's such a cool thing, and I'm really focused on this idea of the service aspect that drove you, because I think if there's a way to harness that to our new generation, because let's face it, it's not getting better out there, and it's only getting more dangerous, and to get people to want to be a part of this profession, money isn't going to be it, and it's certainly not going to be something that has longevity, right? Uh, I really think that focusing on that piece where something tells you on the inside, hey, yeah, I'm making money hand over fist, I'm basking in the sun every day, but it's not enough. Like, what do you think that is that drives us as a psychology expert?
oh, let me just lay it on you since I'm an expert.
Yeah.
So I view this as a bit of a leadership task and a culture thing. So I think people can find purpose in their work, and often like for me I needed mentors to help me do that. I needed opportunity. I needed a blend of a whole lot of things. I didn't, like I said, it wasn't until service even came into my mind until I was in my late 20s. And then I didn't even really know I couldn't put the language to it. I just thought, well, maybe it's a nonprofit development. Um, uh, to me, when I'm working with a young officer, one of the most important things I can do is help them to create a personal why for themselves and put some language to the things that are in their heart, and find out put some language to what's driving them, and make sure that that's consistent and has some integrity with how they're living their lives as well. Right. So if you say your purpose is deep, meaningful relationships, and you've been divorced 3 times and nobody likes hanging out with you, I'd be like, well,
Yeah.
maybe purpose is something else, or you need to more clearly define your purpose so that you can actualize it operationalize it in your life. To me, I'll tell you where it crystallized for me. I was taken to I got hired, and I was sitting in the evidence room helping the evidence tech for like a month or 2 months before I went to the academy. And there was a guy from my agency who was graduating the month before I started.
Mm.
Right. So I hadn't been to the academy yet, but I went down to watch his graduation just as a field trip. And I remember sitting through that graduation, fairly intimidated, extraordinarily excited to think, in a month, I'm going to start this program. In 5.5 months, I'm going to be standing up on that stage. But what really, really got me, and what helped to crystallize my purpose and what I wanted to do as a law enforcement officer and how I was going to manifest that service, was they read the citation for the Patrol Partner Award. So every basic law enforcement class, there's various awards that are given out. So top 3 academically, top 3 firearms, top 3 overall, and then various awards at that time for fitness awards and this, that, and the other thing. And the last one they give out is a peer voted award for Patrol Partner, which is that person who, on your worst day, when everything is falling apart, and you turn around and you see them walk through the door, there's that sigh of relief. Tim's here. Thank God. I'm going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And I thought, that's what I want right there. That's how I'm going to serve to start with. I'm going to serve this community that I'm joining. I'm going to be the best cop I can. I'm going to serve the other officers that I'm choosing to be a part of. And man, that started everything for me. That's how my perspective on training started. I was like, well, they're in a training program. This is probably one of the best trainees. I'm going to take this training super seriously. And then when I got out, I thought, well, what if I had a hand in creating the patrol partner, the best patrol partner in every single cop that I interact with?
Wow.
And I was like,
Yeah.
man, this is a possibility. And then that's how my career evolved. That still to this day motivates me. And it went beyond training. It went beyond firearms and fighting and all the other stuff. And when I started to again mature in this process, and then I realized that there's more to life than law enforcement. That took about 5 years to figure out. Because this. It is extraordinarily intoxicating to be allowed to do the things that we do, to get paid
Yeah.
to do the things that we do. It is extraordinarily intoxicating. And
It's emotionally taxing too. You have to dive in, and pretty soon you look back and you're like, oh, there's other people in my life too.
well, and that's it, right? So I'm working graveyard. I'm getting junk sleep. I'm still, a high level of fitness. I am dealing with, everybody deals with trauma in their lives, and there's a trauma that's associated with our community that is just different than other folks. And
Yeah.
other communities have different types of trauma, but you're dealing with all of that, the lack of sleep, the strain on the relationships. And I realized, man, there's more to this than just shooting and fighting
Yeah.
and,
It's a
and
lifestyle.
documenting that in paperwork. And if I want to do this for the long term, right, the patrol partner is not just the one that on their worst day, their partners turn around and say, thank God Matt's here. It's my spouse, my brothers, my sisters, it's my friends. I want my friend Tim to turn around and say, oh, thank goodness Matt's here. I've got questions for him. I want those. And that became about the relationships and how to supercharge all of the things that I was doing on a daily basis with the relationships that were around me and how that might serve my purpose. And then the purpose got even bigger, but it still did become, I guess a service oriented thing. There's just a lot of meaning in building relationships that are designed to inspire and support other people.
So many times you hear this phrase or something like it, work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I've experienced is that there's really no true such thing, right? It's something that you have to live on duty and off duty because that's who you are. And if you try to pretend like you're taking off a mask every time you go home, it's just very disingenuous and it often fails pretty horribly. So I
Yeah.
like that you have that.
Well, and what it became for me, Tim, is I don't, if it's a perfect balance, like a people think it depends on what you think of when you say the word balance. I often think of this scales that are tipping, and on one side I have an equal amount to the other side, so they're like this. Well, I got to tell you, bro, my wife and my daughters are like this. They're more important than my job, my health and my relationship with my friends and all of they're more important than my job, which is fine. I'm not looking to balance those two out. The kicker is when they're off, when the balance is or the scales are tipped in a different direction, where I'm subordinating my health and my relationships to work. That's a no-go for me. And I don't think there's like a perfect balance. I've used this phrase a few times in the last couple of years with people, and they've kind of latched onto it. Life has lots of tasks. And often when I ask people, hey, how's it going? And they say, oh, I'm super busy. Like, no kidding. Life has lots of tasks.
Yeah.
And my response recently, and I don't even know where the concept came to me, but when asked that a couple of years ago, I thought, every time somebody asks me that, I'm going to answer, I have a lot to prioritize. And that's how I'm going to approach these things.
I
I'm going
love
to
that.
just prioritize the things that need prioritized. And those that don't, they're not going to get prioritized because it's more accurate language. And it's frankly, it's true. So
Yeah.
busy just means like the scales are getting heavier and I'm not doing jack about them, bro. I'm going to prioritize my wife and my daughters or pretty much everything else. My health is right up there too, because I don't want to be I want to be around to prioritize them. So those are kind of my big three. And then a lot of the other stuff is going to fall under that. So I don't know if there's really a scale as much as a list of things I've got to do. And I'm just going to prioritize those things based on what I choose to prioritize.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if I'm articulating that as well as I want right now, but that really has made life easier for me because I don't worry. I don't feel busy. I just have a lot to prioritize. Those things that I don't prioritize, they just don't get done. So
doesn't happen. Yeah. Andy Frisella, who has a podcast, Real AF, he's fantastic. I'm a daily listener. He's awesome. But Andy talks about the dichotomy of being busy versus being effective. And people can be busy all day long and not get where they need to be versus somebody who knows how they need to get their stuff done, prioritizing, like you're saying, and then actually executing on that. And it's such a more robust way of thinking about it, I think. And I really appreciate that. And that's true in any discipline, in life, in any job. Everybody's got stuff, but being able to really execute on the stuff that is prioritized, that's a huge note there. I like that.
Well, let me pile on with this. If you're busy, life is happening to you. If you're prioritizing, you're the one happening to life. Oh. So the locus of control is me. I'm the one choosing what I do. I'm not burdened down by the world just hammering away at me. So, and I think, literally the name of my company is One IC. It stands for the one in charge. You're the one in charge of your own life. Busy just means I have no control over my life and life is happening to me. No, dude. No, that's not the way I'm going to approach it.
You're going to drown. You're not going to be effective. I love that. I'm inspired now. That's fantastic.
Mission
and
accomplished.
We'll definitely talk about your company here because I think you're doing amazing things there. But before we dive in, I didn't know that you had martial arts experience before you started doing our DT instructor program. And anybody who knows Arc Tactical knows that we are heavy, hard skills based. We love our martial arts stuff. We love our tactics stuff. So tell me a little bit about that. How did you get introduced to martial arts?
So I have been a fan of Japanese culture my whole life. If there's maybe such a thing as past lives, I was probably Japanese in my past life. I love Japan. I've traveled there as a teenager. I used to speak conversational Japanese. Just really attracted to Japan and Japanese martial arts. In Hawaii, and I've always wanted to train in martial arts, but I hadn't prioritized it.
Right.
But I prioritized other things, sports and fitness, and it just, I didn't have time, or I didn't make time. But then I had lots of spare time in Hawaii, especially before I met my wife, and I could just do whatever the heck I wanted when I got off work. And if there was no surf, I was like, man, I don't know. Let's go check out some dojos around town. And I walked into, I forget the name of it now. It's been quite a while. It was an Aikido dojo in Hawaii, and it was the first one outside of Japan that was had direct lineage to Hombu Dojo in Japan. And
oh, wow.
So Aikido's not like, you're not going to see anybody win an MMA match with Aikido.
Right.
But I was very attracted to
really important.
What's that?
The principles are really important.
But the principles, so I appreciated the principle of it, which was very much about, it was a very self-defense oriented martial art. There's not really a lot of offense per se. It was very much about using an attacker's energy and redirecting it. And I was like, man, this is kind of something I can get behind. And it looked cool, bro. It looked cool. It looked very elegant. And I thought, and there was work with various tools like swords and staffs. And I was like, cool, I'm going to try this out and see. And one of the instructors was happened to be a Honolulu PD cop. And when we were training, my man was hard as woodpecker lips, dude. I was like, dude, this guy he's not working hard, and he has thrown me all over the place. His grip is like steel, and it's like, oh, this is fantastic. And you could train really, really hard. I've done, since then I've done some jiu-jitsu and judo, and with all of those, you can train really hard. and not get seriously hurt. Where
Sure.
you and I, if we were striking, we can't go full power without padding on.
Right.
But
Right.
you could go. It was fun. So anyway, that was my background. I did that for I don't know several years before I became a cop, and then I continued to train very, very hard for like 10 years, 4 or 5 days a week. I would get up during graveyard after about sleeping, I'd say 3 or 4 hours, go train in Bellevue with George Ledyard, and then come back and sleep for 2 more hours and then go to work. And I did that a couple of times a week working graveyard. I was just totally into it. And the upside is much of our control tactics are based in the same set of martial arts principles. Joint locks, especially wrist locks and arm locks and balance principles. When I started doing that in the DT side of the house, I was like, "Oh, I know this technique," and it was awesome. And frankly, to this day, whether I'm using the stuff or teaching it, or I now review all of our uses of force, the vast majority of what folks are doing is essentially Aikido joint locks or any other martial arts joint locks. Because the human body is the same thing. Just pick your martial art. We're still tweaking the joints the same way. But anyway, that's the background in it. And then as I work through the curriculum, I got exposed to jiu-jitsu and judo and various types of striking with all of the people that you and I trained with early in our careers who were super inspirational. And it just went from there. I am not training as much as I did back in the day.
Yeah.
Getting a little older, and I'm just focusing on prioritizing other things right now. But I still love to teach control tactics, and when I get the chance to roll around with the fellows doing some jits.
It's so much fun. It's so
Super
much fun.
fun.
I had an opportunity earlier this week to go to Greg Anderson's gym, Electric North Jiu-Jitsu, and roll with some friends there, Jay Downing and Rachel Anderson. And they beat the hell out of me. It was fantastic. I loved it. It was so good. But I do think it's so important just to keep those skills up, whether you're, you're on the job or not. I mean, it fills the soul, keeps you fit, all that stuff. So that's really cool to hear. That is not something I knew. I think when we first got to know each other, you were going through the state's DT instructor program,
Yep.
and I had been doing that a couple of years prior. And it was just cool because we knew each other from our daily jobs, and then popping into that program as well. Is really good. I like that. When did you start contracting with the state?
So I started teaching with the state, I think around 2018. My friend Mike, who was kind of my other big cop mentor friend, had been teaching the first level supervision class. And he knew about my interest in psychology. And by 2018, I'd become a sergeant, and I'd already gone through the class, and I was familiar with the material. And he said, "Hey, you might be good at teaching this. Why don't you come down and watch class and see what you think?" So I came down, and I think I came down for 1 or 2 days of the 5-day class. And at one point he pulled me into the conversation. I was just sitting in the back of the room, kind of auditing, not even a part of the class. And he pulled me into a piece of the conversation, and I threw some things out there, and it got a really great reaction from the class and from the other instructors in the room, including, I don't know if she was the program manager, but she was involved with the program. And Mike said, "Hey, I'm thinking about having Matt." And she's like, "Yeah, he definitely needs to come back." I had no idea that I was going to stay in.
They got
That
you
was
hook, line, and
not on
sinker.
kind of on my radar. I was a physical skills trainer, teaching small groups and teaching basically martial arts and firearms and tactics. No idea that I was going to be standing in front of a room. Did it once, and it was intoxicating.
Yeah.
It was really special. And my dad had done that for a number of years, so I knew what it looked like. But that's where I started contracting with them, and I taught that class I am still on the cadre, but they have a bunch of newer instructors, and frankly, some of those guys are better instructors at that material than I am. So that role evolved into what I'm currently doing, but that was how it started, teaching leadership to sergeants, to first level supervisors. It was awesome. It's still that first level leadership is still I mean, it's right up there with my favorite things. And the emotional intelligence work that I'm doing is basically the same stuff.
That is awesome. And I can't wait to get into that. I think it's so unique that teaching the physical skill stuff really does translate well to doing the cognitive stuff and the emotional intelligence stuff. I mean, that piece is so empowering to be in front of a class, to be able to articulate a point, to be able to get them, your students, to receive that in a way that they can then reproduce it. That whole formula works no matter what you're teaching. I always tell agencies that we're working with that everybody on my team could teach the phone book to somebody and they would know exactly what that means by the end of it. And it just is a skill that you have to build over time. But I think a lot of the teaching piece translates directly to leadership, not just because you're the one in front of the class, but just on your day-to-day sergeant duties. I know I experienced the same thing. Is, hey, I learned a ton through teaching and trying to invest in people and making the same choices or the same impact on my squad. And then as that grew, tell me a little bit about that. Are you feeling the same way, or?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So early on when I switched from teaching first level supervision into teaching the patrol tactics instructor course, which has really been my kind of passion project for the last couple of years, we used to diagram out the total number of hours that were spent teaching really relevant leadership tasks. And it was equal or more in the patrol tactics course, but it was an instructor course, not a leadership course. And I said, you guys, an instructor is a leader.
Yeah.
People are looking to you for guidance. They're looking to you for clarity. You have to, I think, a fundamental task of great leaders and great instructors is the ability to articulate under pressure.
Mm.
And the number of people that I have seen go from an instructor development, or in my case, the one I'm involved in, the patrol tactics instructor course, into leadership roles and then be really, really successful at them. It's our batting percentage is extraordinarily high. And one of my favorite, I don't know if I'll tell the whole story, but one of my favorite students was the current San Juan County Sheriff. I had him as a student in first level supervision. He was a student in patrol tactics as a patrol tactics instructor. He came back and would help teach, and or he'd be a guest lecturer. And he is a peach of a human being. I mean, he's one of my favorite people. And he articulated when he was running really similar things that I've heard him articulate as an instructor. It was basically the same message, and he just had a slightly different audience. And his integrity, like who he says he is and who he actually is, were so in alignment that people just loved his authenticity. They loved his message. And I think you can, if you are a great instructor, you are serving your students in a way that inspires them to be the best of whatever it is that they're going after. Not the best version of you, but the best version of whatever they're going after. And bro, that's what I want out of my leaders too. That is what I want out of my leaders. There's lots of times, there's lots of different type of leadership. I don't necessarily always need somebody to be inspirational. Sometimes a leader needs to fill different roles. But when they're doing the leader thing, when they're inspiring people, I think instructors can fill a very similar role. So it's huge. And when we're teaching the PTI course, PTI is the Patrol Tactics Instructor, it's a 2-week class, a 10-day class. Around day 4, the light bulb goes off. And when I stand in front of the class and I go, do you guys all see how this is a leadership course in addition to a tactics course? The heads are like, yep, 100%, 100%. And people are like, I've heard several people say, I got more leadership skill out of this instructor development course than any other leadership course that I've taken, which is a huge compliment to somebody like me who, is a leadership instructor. It's super cool. It's super cool. So yeah, those are to me, Tim, those are the same. Instructors and leaders are the same.
I love it. And it's so important because I think if you ever do an exit interview, if you ever talk to somebody who has left an agency for another agency or for another career, you ask them, one of the top things they talk about, it's not necessarily pay, it's the leadership or the culture is one of those two things. And I would argue that the culture is the responsibility of the leader to set the tone, and being able to invest in our leaders and give them the tools and maybe the outlook that is necessary to continue to build that culture. That's how we're going to bring more people back to law enforcement in the noble profession that it is.
That goes right back to your early point, right? How are we going to inspire people that to serve when they've got this, like I did, this hint of, ooh, I might want to do this thing now. Bro, it's through great leadership and great instruction. So doing what you're doing with your company, doing what we're doing, you and I are doing, building instructors across the community, not just to be great instructors, but to be great leaders and take some responsibility and accountability for their students.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're a road supervisor. You're involved in the SWAT team. You're doing DT stuff, and all of that cool tactical stuff goes right out the window. And now we're teaching cognitive courses, which I would argue, I'm being facetious, but all that stuff ties into everything else that we do. I mean, it's all the same stuff. We don't train or operate in silos, So being able to have that cognitive stuff and mirror that with a lot of the tactic stuff is critical. But you started teaching the first line supervisor stuff and a lot of the other leadership courses. How did you get tied in with the patrol tactics piece? Because that is, like you mentioned, something that merges tactics and the cognitive stuff.
Yeah, without going into the history of the program, it's a legislatively mandated program. But it was the answer. The legislator mandated a program, and the Criminal Justice Training Commission, the side of the house that we're a part of, the DT side of the house, was already coming up with a patrol tactics course. And it was in development when the legislator said, you got to teach cops to do this list of things. And some of our friends at the time were like, oh, well, we have that. Here you go. It's really very fortuitous because it took a class, a program that was going to be kind of optional, and it made it mandatory for every cop in the state, which also means that it needed to be really good.
Yeah.
Because a crappy mandatory training is like, it's a waste
we
of
have enough
everybody's
of those,
time.
actually.
Yeah, I've been through plenty of them, and it's not just a waste of the officer's time and the instructor's time, but for every stakeholder in the community that is interested in the output of that or is paying for it.
Right.
So let's not waste everybody's resources, their tax dollars or their expectations. Okay, so I'm teaching first level supervision. I'm pretty involved in SWAT at this point, probably 6, 7, 8 years on the team at that point. I'm on a break at the training commission from first level, and I walk, of course, like a DT guy, because I'm a DT guy at that point. I walk through the gym to see who's training, say hi to all my friends. And a buddy of ours, Sean, walks out of his office at the same time that I walk by. And Sean's, again, been a great friend and mentor ever since I started interacting with him in the gym. And we start chatting, and he goes, "Hey, what's your team doing for close quarters combat? Your team movement, hallway movement?" And we start talking about it, and I break down kind of my philosophy on it. And he's like, "Wow, we need to talk some more. I might have you come in and work with us on this program that we're developing." And then he asks, "Hey, what are you doing here? Why are you randomly walking through the gym?" And I said, "Well, I'm next door teaching emotional intelligence and crucial conversations for the leadership course." And he's like, "You do that?" It's like, "Yeah, Sean, my background's in psychology. My undergrad's in psychology, my graduate degree's in leadership." And it's like, "Oh, would you be interested?" So first he wants me to teach CQB, and then he goes, "Hey, would you have any interest in teaching emotional intelligence for this new class?" And I was like, "Well, sure. I mean, I would love to." And that was because I was already under contract, and it was going to be the opportunity to do additional teaching and in a topic that I was really passionate about. And I said, "Hey, Sean, what do you want included? What is your mandatory curriculum that needs to be included? And he hands me a single sheet of paper with this little grid on it. He's like, this stuff has to be in there. You have to cover these 4 like little topics. I go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's easy. I go, how much time do I have? He's like, 4 hours. Oh, because that's a long class, right? Coming up with a 4-hour class, it's a 4-hour basically lecture. It's not, hey, we're going to go practice some stuff and then we'll come back and we'll go practice and come back. No, you're going to talk and present material for 4 hours. Super intimidated. I was like, oh my God, this is insane. What am I going to do? But of course I said, yes, I'll take this task on. Boy, it must've been 3 or 4 months later. About 2 months later, I attended as a student, knowing that I was going to create a piece of the curriculum. So I took a ton of notes on what, at the time, Sean was doing the block of instruction on emotional intelligence. I took a bunch of notes. I recognized I looked at what the audience reacted to really well with what he presented. And I was like, okay, obviously I want that. And then I recognized some things that were, based on my experience, could have been tightened up. And I recognize that. Added in a lot of a similar format that he was using, tweaked it a little bit, built my own class from the ground up, PowerPoint, speaker notes, all those things. And the first time I presented it, it was in Vancouver, Washington, day 2 of that morning. I hadn't slept the night before. I was renting a house with our friend David, who was another DTMI that we're buddies with. And David would tell you that I was basically freaking out. I'm going over my notes. I'm talking to David. He's a good friend and mentor, and he's doing all the things to keep me pretty chilled out. But I didn't really sleep to him that night. And I got up, and I was not as practiced as an instructor as I am now. And I made so many basic fundamental instructor mistakes. I didn't test my tech. I had my notes and my PowerPoint were all jumbled up. There's so many, when I look back on it right now, I'm grateful for the experience, for all the things that I learned. But I think,
kidding, man.
The presentation I now do, over 5 years, 6 years later, is so much tighter. But that's how I got into it. I was walking down the hallway, as chance would have it. Sean walked out and asked a question about cool tactical stuff. And when he asked why I was there, I was like, oh, I'm over here doing this nerd stuff because I have a degree in psychology. And he's like, do you want to do it again? And bro, that's been like seeing that Patrol Partner Award, seeing the reaction that people had to these crazy ideas I was bringing up about practicing gratitude and breath work and meditation and building relationships and really working hard at self-awareness and self-management. I was shocked. I was like, what's the worst that they can do? They could ask me to not do this again. Okay. Right. But the complete opposite happened. We had people in class that are having extraordinary emotional reactions to things that I did not expect. I had people telling me, you changed my life. I'm feeling inspired. Just wonderful gifts. Wonderful gifts. And that just motivated the heck out of me. I was like, whoa, what if I had 6 months to build a class? What if now 6 years later, right. This morning I'm working on a version of the class for the crisis intervention training group when I'm teaching a block for them now. And I'm trying to make it better and better and better because I know it can make a difference. Maybe more of a difference than the stuff that I'm teaching from a tactics standpoint. And the cool thing is, and that's the last thing I'll say about it, I know I'm really chatty, that was not just an incumbent police officer. It started as an incumbent police officer program, but it's a human program. And I teach, like the class that I teach at the basic SWAT school on emotional intelligence and stress management and self-awareness and all this, like it is 90% the same as the class that I teach to Chateau Saint Michel Winery for their leadership and event staff on how to have
Wow.
self-control and practice de-escalation with some of the customers and employees that they're dealing with. Like it's the same stuff. And it's just it's so cool to be able to tell a civilian course, hey, this works under tremendous stress in a no-fail environment. Like to have pressure tested this stuff now over the course of 6 years, and then hear back from people who were in officer-involved shootings and be like, dude, I did the thing you said. It helped me in the moment. And I've done the thing you said in the last 6 months, and it helped me with the trauma.
It doesn't get better than
No,
that.
it doesn't.
That's
It's
awesome.
totally awesome. It's a blessing. And I continue to say, all I'm doing is coach, just like you are, right? You don't train people, and then when they get in a fight, you materialize and fight for them. They are the ones in charge of their life. So they still have to go and practice what you've showed them. They have to have a good mindset. They've got to have a good nutrition program and do all the things on their own. But it's cool to give them some stuff that they can easily practice. And if they're practicing it, have really great results.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, in the civilian world, emotional intelligence isn't something that is highlighted as much as it should be, right? I think a lot of us just get by, and there's actually some science to it. There's actually some things, tangible things that you can do to make life a lot better and your relationships a lot better and stress a lot more manageable. And having heard some of the things that you're pushing out there, man, it is such a cool program, and just the versatility of it, I think it's awesome. And that kind of leads into what you're doing now. And I'm probably going to skip a couple of things, so please fill in. I'm sure you will. But you took what you've built for the state, put your own personal spin on it so that you could adapt it to other areas, and it's really served you well. And based off of that, you created your own training company, which is One IC, the One in Charge. And we'll get some information on how people can reach you to set up a class or just to have a meeting with you. But tell me about what gave you that push to move out of the law enforcement sector or even the public sector and into the private sector, serving law enforcement agencies and other agencies or businesses.
Well, there's two. My friend Jabin and David and I were sitting around after teaching patrol tactics a couple of years ago, and we thought, at the end of these courses, people kept saying, "We want more, we want more," and we're like, "Bro, it's been 2 weeks. I don't have any more. I'm out of gas."
Yeah.
But I can appreciate that you want more, right? So we thought the response was not just the cops want more, but the human beings wearing the uniform said, "I want more. I want more out of my life." And this emotional intelligence stuff really resonates with me. And I thought, man, this is super cool. And we all three of us sat around and we're at dinner and we're like, man, we should do something about this. 6 months passes, nobody does anything. And then eventually I thought, it's actually a pretty good idea. I wonder what it would take. So I tested out the material. I actually tested it out on some city employees at the city that I work at. Some conversations with the police chief at the time and the city manager and the HR, and they said, "Hey, can you do a class on de-escalation?" And I did that, and it was mediocre. And then I started to include some of the EI stuff that I had developed, and it really started to resonate. And I was like, I knew it. It's for humans, right? So that really landed. So it was just doing it within the city that I work in initially. And that helped me refine the curriculum. And actually the city is the new version of my class. So I build a new version of a class every 3 years or so. So part 2, we'll call it, same thing. I built the class and I taught it at the city. They were my practice group. And then I started to present it under my state contract. I build all the material myself and I own it. I don't get paid by the state to develop it. I just get paid they essentially pay me to present my material. So I still own the material,
sure,
but it's all developed in that direction. So that's really, I kind of forget where I was going with this whole. That's how it started going into the private sector, and that's where the business started. And bro, you and I sat down at dinner with the same group of guys, and we're like, and things had started to roll just a little bit, and I thought, what's the next step? And we talked about building websites and so on, and kind of what laying the groundwork for that about, I don't know, was that 18 months ago? Something like
Something
that.
like that. Yeah.
And I was like, screw it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make the investment. The next check that I get for my contracting, I'm going to invest that in the business, into the website, the business cards, the licensing, a logo, all of this stuff, just to kind of get started. And that's that. I mean, that's how it. Then it was born. I was like, well, now I have to put something on my website. What does that look like? And I have to start thinking about other audiences. And a year ago, let's see, fire department, our local fire districts, one of their community resource paramedics saw my class that I was teaching the civilians. I happened to be having a conversation with them about something else, and I was like, hey, why don't you come and take a look at this class? That CRP is also somebody that I'm speaking with at a conference. So we had very similar interests as it relates to human performance and stress management. She loved the class. She's like, oh, you have to come and do this for the fire department. I talked to the fire department about it, and they said, well, we're interested in your class. Let's do a demo class. I said, I'll do it, but I need 15 people in there, and I need decision makers and critics. And the critics are so key. I have some feedback buddies, and you're one of them, that will tell me how it is. And it's so, I so much appreciate that. And so I had this room of firefighters. I got some pretty direct feedback, and it helped me tailor that class. And so now I teach fire. That's how the firefighters got pulled into this. I just tailored the cop class. I brought up some firefighter examples, and boom, I'm selling the class to firefighters. And then the private side of things kicked off. I started having companies who were like, hey, I heard about this from usually a spouse of a firefighter or a referral from somebody. A lot of it comes from people asking cops about somebody to train their staff on de-escalation. And what they don't realize is, like, de-escalation is not a magic word that we're all keeping secret until you pay us, and then we'll tell you what the magic word is. So what's happened is I have enough of a reputation, and I've talked in front of enough people at this point that there are cops around the state who are like, oh, you need to talk to Matt Porter at 1IC Training Group, and he has a de-escalation class. It's founded on emotional intelligence. It will be so much more than just the magic word to say to people. And it's just blossomed from there. It's been super fun.
That's awesome.
The hard part is prioritizing all of the administrative things that you have to prioritize running a small business and working full time and being, committed to a relationship with your spouse and your kids. But it's also super cool. I continue to meet new people and have these great experiences. It's awesome.
Well, I think that same service piece that drove you to law enforcement is what's also driving you to go and serve the people that you're teaching, right? There's hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement officers who are doing an amazing job, and just that's what they do every day. But there's a few that will go beyond that and will commit to that improvement mindset, that how do I better my brothers and sisters in the community? And then we look at that, like you just said, hey, it's not a uniform issue, it's a human issue. So if that math works out, well, then that means everybody needs this class, right? And so being able to grow past that, you got nothing but good things ahead of you. And it's so well earned because you put so much effort into it, and it's brilliant stuff. I think when you're building your company, and we're all still building our companies, I mean, this is a never ending process, but there's a lot of places out there that will build a brand and then try to pack a class into that, or frame training into the brand. Whereas you did the exact opposite. And that is, I have this amazing material. Now it has to be something, right? And I think that's probably the best way to go, because there's a lot more substance in there. There's a lot more value that you can give out to other people. Man, you're the real deal, man. That's
I
so
appreciate
cool.
it, brother. Yeah, the company has been very meaningful in supporting the message. So it's, I, if I could afford to do it for free, I would. I just can't afford to do it for free. I mean, I'm flying to
Yeah.
Pennsylvania twice in the fall, and I have to charge for the class. Otherwise, I can't afford the airline tickets. I still have to. Mama needs to buy a new pair of shoes, and the kids need milk in the fridge.
That's right. That's right. And that's the thing too, is it's, we, if we could, if everything equal, we would give it away, but the truth is that it's valuable and it is life changing. And uh entrepreneurs that listen here will know that, hey, you don't just, it's not for free. We work hard, and it's important to charge an appropriate price for that type of thing, and that learning what that is a tough thing. I'll tell you, for me, I have undercharged for my training for years and years and years. And when I actually got into a room with actual business people who knew what that looked like, they're like, "What are you doing? You need to be charging like 3 times that."
Yeah.
And it's just not in my nature typically to do that, because I want to serve. And so it's a balance there, but super cool,
Well,
man.
I think it's,
Now, out,
when you talk about what are you going to pay your employees, the pay is an expression of the owner of their value. Like, but
yeah,
up to a certain point, it doesn't, you don't get a return on your investment. So, if I
right,
pay you $100,000 or $200,000, you're like, I'm using those numbers arbitrarily,
yeah,
but at a certain point, it just doesn't really, the money isn't what makes the difference. And now in charging for a service or a course like we're providing, I agree. I say on the one hand, I would do it for free, but I also want people to make a financial investment, because that means they're prioritizing where they're spending their money or their organization is. And it's a reflection on either their organization's choice to invest in their employees or their choice to invest in themselves. And so,
yeah,
if you
yeah,
show up for I have taught, I've been paid to teach courses that people were getting for free. So a third party organization
right.
is funding it. And people are in there for the free snacks and the week off of work. And I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, let's make this still some valuable training for them. Anyway, I think I'm creating value just like you are. I'm creating value. And could I charge more? Probably. I think I'm positioned in the right place for what we're doing. Um, yeah.
Well, I think people are paying for the transformation. I work with Ian Edwards, and we're recording on the 12th right now. On the 15th, I'm going to be in Tennessee teaching our de-escalation instructor course, and people walk out of that class different people. I was just meeting with Ian today, and he was reading off some emails that he recently got from one of our past classes, and they were talking about how it not just changed how they operate within their agency, but their relationships with their spouses and their families. And if they're in leadership roles, how they deal with subordinates. You don't, you don't want to skimp out on that. You know what I mean? So I've loved that. And I think that entrepreneurship piece is important. The money piece is important, but the true trade is the value, and people are getting hit with that value through your company. And that a difference is being made because you feel it, you see it. So that is so great,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, it is, man. The dollars help sustain the travel and the website and all of that, but it's the other stuff. It is ultimately that service piece. The fact that I feel like trusting relationships are important to me. I think like trusting relationships can change the whole world, and like if not the whole world for one person, their whole world. The opportunity to inspire the trust that builds relationships. What's the price for that? And I know what you and Ian are
Right.
teaching is very similar to what I'm teaching now. So I get the same letters that you guys are getting.
I love it.
Bro, it's awesome. It's super fulfilling.
Yeah.
Literally, if I'd never taught another class, I would just pull out letters that I've gotten or emails or text message and be like, okay, well, I made a difference in my life.
Oh,
It's
that's
pretty
good.
rad. But I'm going to
That's
keep going. So,
awesome. Yeah. Keep
yeah.
doing it. One of the things that I anticipate getting a question about is like, hey, if you're teaching the same stuff, aren't you guys competitors? And the answer is no. The truth is this, the message is important. And so getting it out there, regardless of what's putting it out there, is still critical. And I'm a believer that a rising tide raises all ships. And I want when I see to just take off, because that's going to challenge Arc Tactical to compete with it. And that those are all good things. And I think this is how these relationships should be. And I've loved watching you guys grow that company and just bouncing ideas off of you and getting some feedback on what we're doing too. Such a great way of doing it. And it doesn't have to be a thing. So I love that. So thank you for your help doing this. It's been fantastic.
Well, likewise, brother, your early mentorship and your recent feedback for me from a couple years ago, like when we were in that gym, was, it's the type of thing that a really good friend would say to another friend when they want them to be successful. So that was, it's pretty rad to be a part of your community.
Oh man, thank you. Outside of emotional intelligence classes, what are the other stuff that you guys are doing out there?
Well, I have a course that I do for a wellness class that sprung up about 2 years ago when I had an agency approach me and say, "Hey, we've had enough people come to us and tell us how stressful and terrible our jobs can be. We don't want to hear any more of those stories. And those stories are powerful and important, but we want to hear just the positive message." And that came from somebody who knew about the protocols that I teach around emotional intelligence. They're like, "Hey, double down on that. We want more of that stuff." So I built out a wellness course. Awesome. I have two of my friends that teach with me. So the upside is they also do all of my EI classes for me, and they can do my feedback scale class, which I'll tell you about in just a second. But the cool thing, and it's the same thing, that if somebody took an EI class from me or de-escalation class from me, and then they took one from you and Ian, they're still going to get something out of it that was different. It might land with somebody else different in the room, or the stories that we're telling to make a point. So I have two guys that are also contractors under my business that they teach those classes, and they're all a little different. It kind of depends. Like my friend Gordon teaches the class, and he has taken our EI class, and he actually does it for teenagers. He's been teaching the EI class for teenagers in sports teams, and it's really cool. So he does that under the business. He also has a 1 hour talk that he gives on his experience with emotional intelligence, dealing with post-traumatic stress, and the process that he has gone through to evolve in the last couple of years. And he is the example of what you can accomplish in your life when you apply what we're talking about, good EI skills. So he has a talk that he gives that the business supports. So the EI class is a de-escalation course. Essentially, it's a personal development class for a bunch of different audience. So like I have a version for healthcare, medical professionals, firefighters, cops, civilian employees. The civilian side is very much focused on personal development, but also has, depending on the audience, right? I just tune it, whether it's for security professionals, which I've done for some large sports arenas, or customer service oriented. It's all in there. And then we have two versions of that. So both of those of the EI class. One is primarily focused on investing in yourself. It's deconstructs emotional intelligence in a way that helps you understand yourself better, and then protocols to have better self-awareness and self-management. Kind of the second version, EI2, if you want to call it that, is very much focused on communication strategies that is founded in hostage negotiations. So I developed that with my buddy Toby, who's a negotiator on the SWAT team with me, Gordon, who works with me as a PTI. So we developed that, and that's an invest in others strategy. So we talk about crisis communication and different communication models and so on, and look at some videos on how that plays out. Those are kind of the big courses. I also teach a leadership course. Do you know Chris Littrell from the Tri-Cities area, Kennewick? Yeah.
Yeah, I love Chris.
Yeah.
Love Chris.
Oh man. So I got I mean, my friend, Mike, who got me into first level supervision, he's like, hey, dude, this guy Chris has started teaching first level. He goes, I want to see the two of you in the same room to see if you light the room on fire, because it's possible that it might happen. He was not wrong. Chris
Oh, wow.
is, he has a great podcast, the Gravity podcast. He is an outstanding leadership instructor, a phenomenal speaker, and one of my favorite people to teach with. So he and I teach a leadership course, a 2-day leadership course. And I'm actually looking to develop a civilian version of that and teach it with my brother, who's got a ton of leadership experience in the civilian sector. So that's very much the same
Wow.
kind of same idea as the EI class. It's about developing who you are as an individual so that you have gas in the tank to fuel your staff. So it's about developing yourself
That's so
and then
important.
team building. So it's just a quick 2-day hitter. I have found that these really, really long classes have so much content that some of the stuff gets lost unless you're a phenomenal student. So I actually like a smaller class, take the class, put the stuff up, start to apply it. And frankly, you could take the same class again in 6 months and be like, cool, I'm ready for what this looks like now that I've implemented these other things. You know, I've have a couple of guys that have been in my EI class 20 times. And it's the same class every time, unless I make a tiny little tweak. And they're like, bro, I still get something out of your class. I'm like, yeah, that's because you're a different person than you were 3 years ago when you took it the first time. So anyway, those are some of the things. We're developing with my buddy Jabin, we're developing a 2-day tactics class. So kind of a squad level patrol tactics course where, you know, a lot of building searches and like it's a basic SWAT school for patrol, but like at a patrol level. That's in the works right
There's
now.
so many agencies that don't have a SWAT team. It's like you let's grab the night shift clerk at 7-Eleven and we're going in this doorway because that's all we got,
Yep.
right?
Hey, bro, you go one direction, I'm going the other. You're like, all right, shoot, let's do this.
That's right. Hold my coffee.
Yeah, hold my coffee. I got
awesome.
this. So yeah, those are, I mean, there's a bunch on my website, a bunch of different classes that we do, but those are kind of the anchor classes, the patrol tactics course and the EI class. Those are really kind of what anchor what we do. And then I do product consulting and stuff like that for a couple of different companies.
Awesome, man. And I think, you know, obviously we'll get your website up in the show notes here when people want to check it out. And you guys, if you've heard the conversation, know that Matt's the real deal. He knows his stuff, but he's also a phenomenal instructor. You can know your stuff and not be able to get the information to other people. You know, it's just true. I've sat through those classes before, but just watching you teach and how you inspire your students and how you light them up, man. There's no doubt in my mind that One IC is going to just be the new thing that people have to do and get to do. So thank you so much for doing this. And I appreciate your story. I love that conversation. And if there's anything else you want the people to know, now's your opportunity, or we'll put it in the show notes. But again, thank you so much.
I've laid enough on you, I think, for a 30-minute podcast. We're at an hour and a half now or so. I can obviously, I talk for a living, so I can keep going, but it's just, you know, hey, check out the website. People can contact me through there. I'm not super active on social media because it's, I guess my marketing department would tell me that I need to be more active on it. But I am the marketing department, so I can also
your kids, because that's what my kids.
I can do other things, but anyway, that's where folks can reach me. I'm also on LinkedIn, so if anybody's looking for like professional networking, that's a really big piece of when I teach leadership. Mentoring is a big deal to me, making those professional connections, and LinkedIn has been great for that. I've really enjoyed working with other people professionally on LinkedIn, and then my Instagram will be I'm sure in the show notes. It's at Matty Mattyp. Primarily,
awesome.
It has evolved primarily into my reading list. So it's like, I'm out here teaching this, or this is the book that I just got done reading. I get asked that question all the time. What are you reading? Because I'm a pretty voracious reader. And if it's a good book that applies kind of to the leadership, emotional intelligence world, it goes on my Instagram. So my whole reading list is on there.
That's so cool. Yeah, if you're not reading, and I'll tell you, I'll be honest, I hate reading, but I do it, and it's so good. I'm an avid reader too, but it's just not something that I ever enjoyed until maybe about 2 years ago. And it's just such a great practice to get in. So I'm going to check out your
Yeah,
reading
that's
list
on
now.
there.
That's
That's
awesome.
on there. If you need recommendations,
So
email
very
me and tell
cool.
me what you want to focus on. I'll dial you in. I love reading.
Awesome. All right, Matt. Thank you so much for doing this, brother. I appreciate you, and can't wait to
All
talk
right, appreciate
next.
you, Tim.